In fantasy football, we know that offensive production is extremely correlated to our fantasy players, whether they meet expectations, whether they miss expectations, or when they absolutely smash our expectations. Last year, we all thought the Seahawks, the Lions, the Jaguars would be bad offenses heading into the year, but the Broncos, the Rams, and the Buccaneers and Colts all ended up being the offenses that we should have been avoiding. Today, we're going to break down which offenses could surprise this year, which offenses could disappoint, and then subsequently, are these fantasy pieces over or undervalued in kind of the targets that I'm going after in each of their offenses. So if you guys enjoy this video at any point, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. Now let's get into it. All right, so I have taken the liberty of outlining the biggest point differentials from 2021 points per game for offensive scoring and 2022 points per game for offensive scoring. A lot of the time, I found a big-time edge between casual and intermediate or advanced fantasy players is usually the casual fantasy players can't see things changing very much year over year. And oftentimes in the NFL, things change rapidly year over year when it comes to like who stayed healthy and, offensive production, defensive production. A lot of the times things are changing a lot year over year, and a lot of casual fantasy players can't see outside what happened the most recent season. They think, hey, run heavy team in 2022, going to be a run heavy team in 2023. Pass heavy team in 2022, going to be a pass heavy team in 2023. But we know things change quickly in the NFL. Maybe they lost a piece or two on offense. Maybe they had an easy schedule last year and they have a harder one this year. Maybe they lost an offensive coordinator. Maybe their quarterback was dealing with injury. We don't know until we know, right? We don't know until these guys are actually on the field playing games, and vice versa. Sometimes we assume teams will be terrible on offense, but if you dig deeper and think of range of outcomes where young players on their roster improve and coaching improves or their quarterback improves or things of that nature, that's when we get some of these breakout offenses. So as you guys can see on the screen, I've outlined the top 10 offenses last year in terms of their point differential positive from 2021 to 2022. So the Jaguars, obviously a big-time surprise last year, big-time improvement from their 2021 Urban Meyer-riddled season. Then you guys can see the Lions, the Giants, the Dolphins, Falcons, Panthers, Eagles, 49ers, Raiders, and Chiefs all ended up being better than we initially anticipated them being going into the season. What you'll notice about these offenses is a lot of the times, a lot of the big hits from last year in terms of fantasy came from these teams, right? Guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, TJ Hawkinson, Saquon Barkley, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Tua Tagovailoa, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Brandon Ayuk, and so many others. A lot of the times, these guys have depressed ADP in drafts because we're expecting something to happen, right? We're expecting their offense to not be very good or to not pass the ball in the case of the Philadelphia Eagles. And then obviously when the season actually plays out, we realize that those takes were not necessarily ones that came true. So if we think back to some of the narratives last year, some of the teams on this list had, narratives like young players, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Detroit Lions, not a lot of people bought into him. They didn't really see that he was going to get better. Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins, again, young player that got better. Devontae Smith for the Eagles, Brandon Ayuk for the 49ers. A lot of these offenses and these players were faded due to either their target competition, the fact that they hadn't done it yet, and then of course with the Eagles, we saw the offense was kind of faded because we thought it was going to be really run heavy. We didn't really believe in Jalen Hurts, but obviously if you saw and you projected forward, you could have seen the Jalen Hurts ascension coming. Then we had teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars and New York Giants who were poorly coached the year before, right? In 2021, we had Urban Meyer and Joe Judge, not good coaches. Then we have Doug Peterson and Brian Daboll come in. The Jags and the Giants obviously moved themselves forward in the NFL pecking order. Then, of course, we had team additions, right? The Atlanta Falcons had drafted Drake London. Kyle Pitts was coming into his second year, so they outperformed their expectations. And then we had the Vegas Raiders also with Devontae Adams coming in. They outperformed expectations as well. Then we had a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, who we knew was good. We knew they had Patrick Mahomes, but they lost Tyreek Hill. So their ADP was depressed a little bit with the loss of Tyreek Hill. Obviously, it ended up being a little bit overrated. Mahomes was still great. Kelce was still great. Some of the tertiary pieces were still pretty good. So keep these these false narratives in mind when it comes to this year's fantasy. Think of some of the narratives that are floating around there about some of the teams, or maybe your favorite team in fantasy football. And we got to ask ourselves, are these narratives true? Because sometimes they are, or are they false? And we can kind of see a range of outcomes where they don't end up coming to fruition. And we can kind of break down some of my top 5 candidates this year in a second. So the league median in scoring last year was 21.9 points in the NFL, which over the course of the full season was 372 points. So let's take a look at the offenses who missed that mark last year, the offenses that underperformed, and maybe try and predict some of the breakout offenses in the NFL. So the cop-out answer, of course, of these offenses that had less than 372 points for last year would be the New York Jets, because they now have Aaron Rodgers. So obviously the New York Jets probably going to be better than they were last year, but I'm not going to use the cop-out answer with the New York Jets. We're going to start with an offense that I have been standing this entire offseason. I'm sure you guys know exactly what offense I'm about to say. The Atlanta Falcons. And this ADP that you guys can see on the screen for the Atlanta Falcons players can be found within our draft guide. You can get it for just $10 when you sign up and deposit on Underdog Fantasy using the promo code FSE. We have our FSE rank from these players, and then also the average of multi-site ADP from Sleeper, from ESPN, from NFL, Yahoo, and then of course you can see the differences between our ranking versus those in our draft guide. So somehow the Falcons scored the 15th most points in the NFL last year. If I asked you guys, how many points do you think the Falcons scored? Where do you think they ranked? A lot of you probably would have said like 25th, 24th in the NFL. And like I mentioned already, I'm sure you guys already know that I'm high on this offense. They are my pick for breakout offense of 2023 to be this year's Jacksonville Jaguars, be this year's Philadelphia Eagles, whatever you want to call it. Arthur Smith is a really good coach, and I think a lot of the times he gets dragged for like how he uses Kyle Pitts or whatever the case is, but he has gotten the most out of his talent. He won 7 games last year with this team and scored the 15th most points in the league, despite, the lack of talent that they really had on this offense. When we think of everything that went wrong for the Atlanta Falcons last year, them scoring the 15th most points in the league, you could make the argument he had one of the best offensive coaching performances of any coach in the NFL. Marcus Mariota was PFF's 28th ranked passer, and then the other games that they had a rookie 3rd-round pick in Desmond Ridder starting game. So the quarterback position was a complete mess last year. Kyle Pitts missed 7 games, so he only played 10 games throughout the entire season. Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson were your starting 2 running backs, a 5th-round rookie and a 32-year-old converted wide receiver. You had a 21-year-old wide receiver 1 in Drake London, who was playing as a rookie as well. And then you had the 23rd easiest schedule, so a hard schedule, a bottom 10 schedule in the NFL. Every single one of those things is better this year heading into the season, right? We have no Marcus Mariota. He was terrible. Desmond Ridder is a second-year quarterback instead of a rookie quarterback. So that's an upgrade. It's not the best situation in the world, but it's an upgrade from last year. You have, hopefully, Kyle Pitts for the full season. You have Drake London now in his 2nd season. You have Bijan Robinson, who could be the unlocking engine piece of this offense, the guy that you need to make this, run-first offense go. And not only that, they have the 2nd easiest schedule in the entire NFL. This Falcons offense could absolutely go ballistic this season. 30% target share rookie receiver in Drake London, bound to take a step forward. Kyle Pitts, a tight end, usually takes them a couple of years to develop. He's entering year 3. The offensive line was the best run-blocking unit in the NFL last year, and it wasn't actually particularly close. So their offensive line, very well suited to the offense that Arthur Smith wants to run. Bijan Robinson is the best running back prospect I've ever seen, one of the best running back prospects of the last 25 years. He just got dropped into an offense that can make mediocre backs look like they're elite running backs. So tell me what you think is going to happen when you drop Bijan Robinson into that offense. Desmond Ridder does not need to be an elite quarterback for this offense to break out. Look what Arthur Smith did with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Ryan Tannehill was a veteran who was left for dead. He comes into the Titans and they flourished on the back of Derrick Henry. I think we might see something similar in Atlanta here. So invest in your Atlanta Falcons. They are going all at great prices right now. Bijan, late 1st-round pick, is a steal. Drake London, a guy going in like the 4th, 5th round, absolute steal. Kyle Pitts, 5th, 6th round, absolute steal. Even though I love Bijan Robinson, I like Tyler Algier at his price tag as well. 11th, 12th round for him. Even if you did not draft Bijan Robinson, I think he's a good handcuff to go after. Next, we get into the Cleveland Browns. As you guys can see on the screen, their ADPs are there. And I know none of us like Deshaun Watson, but I play fantasy to win, and Deshaun Watson was an elite fantasy quarterback the last time we saw him fully healthy on the field for a full season. From 2018 to 2020, he was a top 5 fantasy quarterback all 3 seasons. And in 2020, the last season that we saw him fully healthy, he was objectively one of the best real-life quarterbacks in the NFL, playing for a terrible Houston Texans team. He carried that team. He was allowing them to score points. Their defense was awful. Their offensive line was awful. He has a better situation here in Cleveland than he ever had in Houston. Nick Chubb has the highest ceiling of his entire career. He has no Kareem Hunt. He's playing with the best quarterback he's ever played with. Still an elite talent. Still going to be very efficient. Still going to break off long runs and score touchdowns. And he has a great offensive line. Amari Cooper, as inconsistent as Amari Cooper may be, this is also the best quarterback he's ever played with. So a good chance that we get a career season out of Amari Cooper yet again. Elijah Moore and David Njoku are both hyper-talented breakout candidates that I've been snapping up in a lot of my drafts as well. If things come together for the Cleveland Browns, we could be talking about all of these guys smashing their ADP. Maybe Nick Chubb's a top 3 back in fantasy. Maybe Amari Cooper's a back-end wide receiver 1. Maybe Elijah Moore is a wide receiver 2 in fantasy or top 30 receiver. Maybe David Njoku's a top 6 tight end. Deshaun Watson, yet again, is a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Invest in the Cleveland Browns at their cost right now. They're going as if Deshaun Watson, the last 6 games of the season, is who he is. I promise you he is not that quarterback, or at least he wasn't for the first 4 seasons of his career. So next offense that we're going to talk about here is the Baltimore Ravens, another AFC North team. You guys can see their ADPs on the screen. Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, and company. All of these guys could absolutely crush. We have a couple narratives at play with Lamar Jackson. Number one, people don't tend to like Lamar Jackson because he's injury prone and all the other things. People think he's a running back. It's the most annoying, overplayed narrative in all of fantasy football. But Lamar Jackson being healthy means that we have an elite offense just because he's an elite NFL quarterback. Then we have a new coach coming in with Todd Monken, who loves to pass the football. They drafted Zay Flowers in round 1. They sign Odell Beckham Jr. on the free agent heap. They have Rashad Bateman coming into year 3, hopefully now healthy. Mark Andrews, of course, the number 1 receiver of that team, still healthy at the tight end position. The backfield, again, finally healthy. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards have not been healthy the last 2 years. Both of them tore their ACLs back in 2021. Both of them were working their way back healthy last year. So these guys are all healthy, and I want pieces of this offense. Anytime you can get Mark Andrews in round 3, you got to do it. Anytime you can get Lamar Jackson at the 3-4 turn, you got to do it. Anytime you can get J.K. Dobbins in the mid-5th where he currently goes, you got to do it. Zay Flowers is my favorite of the receivers to take a shot on because he has the most unknown factor, but I also do like Rashad Bateman in the double-digit rounds as well as Odell Beckham Jr. This Ravens offense has been elite without all these talented pass catchers, right? We've seen 2019, they had an elite offense with basically just Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and Mark Andrews. They didn't have all these pass catchers. They were throwing to like a rookie year Marquise Brown. They were throwing to a bunch of slappies out there. This offense could be elite, even if it's only a few of these guys that hit, right? Maybe it's just Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, and J.K. Dobbins and Lamar Jackson. That's enough for this offense to be absolutely elite and crush their ADPs right now. So definitely take some shots on the Baltimore Ravens. Next, we get into the Chicago Bears, an offense that I think is operating with a lot of narratives going against them, and the market right now is operating with certainty. And anytime that's happening, you want to take advantage in fantasy. The market, being ADP, is drafting the Chicago Bears as if they're historically low 22.2 pass attempts per game, which is like the 3rd lowest mark since 1985, is going to keep up. In today's NFL, that's just historically not likely to happen. And remember last year, when some of you guys in the comments called me crazy for drafting A.J. Brown everywhere I could get him because, you know, the Eagles don't pass the ball. They're never going to pass the ball. They're never going to be a pass-heavy offense. I don't trust Jalen Hurts, blah, blah, blah. This coaching staff in Chicago has shown the ability to adapt. They adapted to Justin Fields and the fact that they had no pass-catching weapons last year by going run heavy. And you know how I know they're going to adapt to their offense? Because the first thing that they did this offseason was trade for a number 1 wide receiver. They traded down from the 1st overall pick. They pick up DJ Moore this offseason. Then we also have the fact that they also traded for Chase Claypool last year. They re-signed Cole Kmet. They drafted the best pass-protecting running back in the NFL draft. You tell me if you think they're going to run the ball like crazy. Let's fast forward 12 months, shall we? Would it shock any of us if Justin Fields, an elite college football prospect coming out of school, top 10 NFL draft pick, elite athlete, elite tools, takes a step forward now with some actual pass-catching weapons around him, now with some actual run game weapons around him, and an actual coach who understands his strengths. He's a second-year starter. He's a third-year quarterback, now with a capable group of pass catchers around him, a little bit more maturity on the offensive line as well. The fact that they've added all these pieces tells me that I want pieces of the Chicago Bears Bears offense. I love DJ Moore at his price tag. Late 4th round, early 5th round is exactly where I love him. Roschon Johnson, also a great late round sleeper. You guys are going to hear me talk about that throughout Superlatives week. Darnell Mooney, also a good late round option. And also, I don't mind Justin Fields in the mid 4th round. Don't mind Cole Kmet and Khalil Herbert where they currently go as well. So go out and get some investment into some Chicago Bears. Next we get into, and finally we get into, of these offenses that are on the rise, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers were a dumpster fire last year. Nobody wanted to watch them. They had Mitch Trubisky starting. They had rookie Kenny Pickett starting. Their offense threw the least amount of passing touchdowns in the NFL with just 12. Hence why Pat Freiermuth disappointed from a touchdown perspective. Deontay Johnson set the NFL record for most targets in a season without a receiving touchdown. This offense is the definition of positive regression, and you can see exactly why. Remember the narratives here. Tomlin's a Hall of Fame caliber head coach, right? He's going to get this team right. He's not going to, have them performing like shit, especially how we saw them close out the season even last year. Kenny Pickett was a rookie quarterback last year, and Mitch Trubisky just stinks. So the fact that these guys are going to be better at quarterback than they were last year is definitely helpful. George Pickens, also a rookie receiver last year. Pat Freiermuth was a second-year tight end last year. Najee Harris stands claim that he was injured last year. So this offense being better shouldn't shock anybody. I think this offense is going to be a lot better than people think, a lot better than they were last year. I really like Jaylen Warren of the running backs. I'm not really high on Najee Harris, but I absolutely love this passing game. I really think there's a good chance that Deontay Johnson is a top 15 receiver this year if they take a step forward. I think there's a good chance that George Pickens is a top 30 breakout season from him. I think that Pat Freiermuth might have an elite tight end upside given the target earning ability that we've seen from him and the connection he has with Kenny Pickett. And I think Kenny Pickett himself has a solid low-end quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2 type of ceiling, similar to like what we saw from Daniel Jones last year. Second year in the system, second year with Kenny Pickett. I think this offense, it would not shock me if they were a top 15 point per game type of unit. And I know I've talked about 3 AFC North teams in this video, but I think that's the best division in football. I didn't even talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, who are probably the best team in that division. I think that's going to be a really competitive division. I could see every single one of those teams winning 7 or 8 games or more, and a couple of those teams winning 10, 11, 12 games in the AFC North. So it's going to be a bloodbath over there. Next, I want to close out this video with some of the teams that could disappoint. I'm not going to, take hard and fast stances and never draft any of these players, but for what it's worth, I just wanted to show you some of the teams that disappointed last year. So I took the teams that finished below the league median in scoring and also lost a lot of scoring from their 2021 season to their 2022 season. I'd say the biggest examples are those bottom 3 teams. The biggest disappointments across the NFL last year, the Los Angeles Rams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Indianapolis Colts, and then some other teams here, the Titans, the Cardinals, the Patriots, the Packers, the Broncos as well. Big-time disappointment, the Steelers, and Saints. When it comes to these type of teams, the biggest catalyst for a lot of their disappointments were, injuries and, young players and instability at quarterback and their quarterbacks underperforming and that kind of thing. So keep that in mind when it comes to these 3 teams that I'm going to talk about briefly at the end of this video, because I do think that, instability at quarterback and some of the injury concerns are cropping up with some of these teams. So these are the teams that finished above the league median in scoring last year that might be on the downturn, might be teams that end up disappointing, relatively speaking. We have the Las Vegas Raiders, who were the 12th highest scoring offense in the NFL last year. I would be shocked if they were a top 12 offense yet again. Josh Jacobs played like a man possessed last year. Devontae Adams played like a man possessed last year. If either of those 2 guys deal with any kind of injuries, any kind of like nicked up, can't play at the level that they were playing at last year, I think this offense might be a bottom 5 unit in the NFL. And I don't even think that's a hot take. And you guys might be thinking, even if they're a bad offense, those guys are going to get all the work and they're going to get all the targets and such. But again, you got to remember these guys were a top 12 scoring unit last year. Devontae Adams scored like 14 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs punched in a number of touchdowns. So if they're not getting the requisite scoring opportunity that they got last year, they are definitely not going to repeat as top 5 receivers and top 3 running backs respectively. So those guys are guys I'm getting a little bit more concerned with, knowing that, I don't really trust Josh McDaniels as a coach as well. I don't really trust Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback as well. It's making me nervous about that situation. I still think they're great players and they could definitely carry this offense again, but I am a little bit nervous about that. The Seattle Seahawks offense, I'm a little bit nervous about at cost. I won't say that I think they're going to be a bad offense necessarily, but knowing that there's some factors at play here, and mainly because of the quarterback, right? We don't know that Geno Smith is going to do exactly what he did last last year. I think he has a great weapons group around him. Metcalf, JSN, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. These guys can all play, but if Geno Smith takes a little bit of a step back from what he performed as last year, then all of these guys are going to disappoint. You're not going to get, late third round or mid third round value out of DK Metcalf. You're not going to get, fourth, fifth round value out of Kenneth Walker and Tyler Lockett, or, late round upside sleeper appeal from Jackson Smith-Njigba and Zach Charbonnet. And Geno Smith himself, I believe a lot of people are going to anchor their quarterback position with just assuming he's going to be yet again a low-end quarterback one like he was last year. It's not a guarantee. So if I had to pick, some of these teams to potentially disappoint, I do think the Seattle Seahawks could be one of those teams. They also, for what it's worth, lost a big piece of their offensive coordination staff there with Dave Canales going over to the Buccaneers as well. So that's something also to keep in mind. And speaking of coaching changes impacting an offense, again, this is a cost-based argument. I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be a bad team. I don't think they're going to be a bad offense. They're still going to be a top 10 offense in the NFL, but they were the best offense in the league last year. And their offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, is now with the Indianapolis Colts. And even last year, we saw Jalen Hurts obviously smash. We saw A.J. Brown obviously smash. Devontae Smith smash. Miles Sanders smash, who's gone now in free agency. I'm a little bit lower just relative to cost on every player from this offense, right? I think Jalen Hurts is the clear quarterback 3, and I think he's closer to Lamar Jackson than he is to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I think A.J. Brown is behind, Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb in my rankings, and a lot of people disagree with that take. But my thought process is if the Philadelphia Eagles were the best offense in the NFL last year and A.J. Brown still didn't finish any higher than like wide receiver 6, wide receiver 8 in fantasy points per game, then he probably doesn't have a top 5 overall ceiling unless Jalen Hurts just gets the absolute keys to this offense and they throw a lot more than they did last year. Devontae Smith, obviously some people make the argument that, when Dallas Goedert was out, he wasn't as productive. So I'm just a little bit marginally lower on every player from the Philadelphia Eagles offense. This last year was an offense I was grabbing everywhere. I thought they were one of the breakout offenses of the year, and I was very profitable last year because of it, because I grabbed A.J. Brown at a value, grabbed Jalen Hurts at a value, grabbed Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert at a value. So this offense is a little bit sketchy when it comes to repeating what they did last year. Their offensive line's a little bit older too. If they deal with some injuries, that could really hamper their offense as well. So definitely keep that in mind with the Philadelphia Eagles. I just think they're kind of priced towards their ceiling as opposed to where they're being priced last year, where there was a lot of ceiling not baked into that cost. So if you guys enjoyed this video, if you got some value from it, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. If you guys want access to the Fantasy Stock Exchange rankings versus home league sites, consensus, multi-site ADP that you guys saw in this video, definitely check out our draft guide. It has that plus a ton more: tiered rankings, positional rankings, superflex rankings, risk ratings, contextualized game logs, all that good stuff available in our draft guide. You can get it for just $10 when you go to underdogfantasy.com. Sign up and deposit using the promo code FSE with just $10. You'll get our draft guide and our weekly start sit rankings throughout the season for free. When you do that, of course, you'll get an email from Underdog within a couple hours or an email from us within 24 hours. And then, of course, also, if you guys don't have an Underdog account, you can't play Underdog, whatever the case is, you can also get access to our rankings and our redraft guide on our site, flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE over there as well for 30% off any of the packages. Save 6 months for free if you sign up annually. So if you signed up for an annual membership right now, you'd be covered all the way until next draft season. So if you guys are dynasty players especially, that'll cover you through the rookie prospect season and all that good stuff. Definitely check that out. Link down below in the pinned comment for that. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.